Good morning, good afternoon, and of course a very good evening to wherever in the world you may be. Now it may have made itself clear to some, depending if you've seen any of my previous videos, that I'm not much of a fan of Lily Allen.
Lily legs, Lily.
To say her name alone leaves a bad taste in my mouth. That being said, I'm surprised dear old Lily hasn't choked swallowing her own hypocritical venom every time she closes her mouth, because God knows there's plenty to choke on. I didn't feel all too keen on taking up my time looking into this silly little girl's life story any more than what most people are forced to, what with very few papers and tabloids nowadays refusing to simply not feature some half-assed story of some ridiculous celebrity gossip forever building up the egos of spoilt, talentless people who always get paid equally ridiculous sums of money that most hard-working people never get to see in a lifetime. Yes, it's a very backwards world when people like this go through life with their head in the cloud, always wanting more and more, whilst getting anything and everything they want and demand along the way. Even when televised shows are staged in supposed recognition of individuals who excel at their workplace, there's always an obvious insight that such programs seem to be once again more about glorifying the celebrity presenters and hosts and diminishing the actual person's regarded contribution to being there. In fact, I'd say given the sheer point being that it takes such talentless half-wits such as, say, Dermot O'Leary, David Walliams, or as some of you may know him, the Roald Dahl rip-off idiot, the just not funny in any sense of the word James Corden, and please America, feel free to keep him, we don't want him back, the equally not funny Jimmy Carr, the never once funny Jonathan Ross. I better get a woman's name in there, otherwise they'll say I'm sexist. Ah yes, the ever hypocritical Kathy Newman. Yes, yes, I also better make a point of mentioning a black person, otherwise I risk being labelled a racist, too. Let's think. We'll go with Lenny Henry, shall we? He's about as talented as a legless racehorse. Oh, and of course, I best not forget that much-loved duo, Ant and Dec. Undoubtedly the most overpaid, useless, scripted pair of double-ended dildos ever to disgrace our screens. My God, they were as much of a bundle of talent then as they are now. And I just want to make a further point when speaking of Bill and Ben. Count your lucky stars. Especially when this landing strip of talent, who despite coming out as an alcoholic and drug abuser, who to top this only recently got himself arrested due to driving under the influence and running into two cars until he decided to actually come to his senses. I believe I read further at the time that a young girl was sat in one of the cars he ran into. If this is right, it's just a case good luck on her side, as well as others, that nobody was seriously hurt or injured in any way. As for Ant, why didn't you just get a taxi? Or wasn't you happy paying the fare? Because of course, with the once-was impressive salary you had thrown at you, I'm sure you were having to make cutbacks. Anyway, I do believe that sympathy and support of endless celeb-obsessed simpletons are already being poured out all over the internet for this reckless moron, regardless of how most people would immediately be rendered jobless, somewhat unemployable, and shunned by most people. This, of course, doesn't tend to be the repercussions that most celebrities face, or at least not until, like, in this very case, the damage is already done, regardless of the earlier warning signs. And it doesn't end there, at alcohol and drugs, oh no. Despite it holding up a possible lengthy prison sentence as penalty amongst other punishments, famous people are also clearly allowed to still hold their heads high when refusing to pay tax, amongst other things. But without going on to mention any names, let's get back on track, shall we? Now, as frustrating as it can be to be flooded with celebrity-related rubbish day in, day out, I must say it does bring sweet tears of joy to my eyes to read a story of a spoiled celebrity getting their just deserts. And that is, it would appear, what our dear darling Lily has had to face. Now, as a young woman who was, by view of most people, becoming something of an aspiring musician, it was probably inevitable at some point that Lily was going to make the headlines, and not always for the right reasons. Some of her more questionable headlines include her apparently assaulting a photographer in London. This happened back when Lily was in her early 20s. She was of course let out on bail and punished at a later date by having her entire Peppa Pig collection confiscated. And despite such harsh punishments, this wasn't the first time Lily had assaulted a photographer. No, prior to this she has supposedly attacked a photographer at the Brit Awards with one of her stilettos. It was thought at the time that this may have been down to her losing out on any recognition that night to Amy Winehouse. Oh, a shame. I believe it was around this time also that Lily had been having a number of fallouts with the equally talentless twat that is Cheryl Cole, or whatever name she's now chosen to adopt. My God, I'd have loved to have thrown those two into a room and just sat back in wonder. Apparently, though, this wasn't too unusual, seeing as Lily is said to have picked fights with a number of people, including Kylie Minogue and Katy Perry, to name a couple. According to her, she did this due to a lack of confidence. Yes. I'm not quite sure if this is part of spoiled little brat syndrome or just because she doesn't have a pair of balls to scratch first thing in the morning, but I do know one thing. If I'm lacking in confidence at any time, then I tend to do something creative, like, say, create a painting or a sculpture maybe, so I can feel more relaxed and confident in my abilities, say, not go around and put people down for the sheer sake of it. Oh no, when I put people down, it's because it's been a long time coming. Anyway, back to Lily. So yes, with this she also went on to say by means of social media that she felt short, fat, and ugly. Well, so do I most days, but I still manage to get out of bed in the morning. Good God, woman, you know you don't have it too bad compared to some. At least you can afford to put some meat on your bones. Then again, I definitely do think this is a common association with most women. I mean, even this Smiler thinks she's fat. But anyway, yes, she continued to say that she hated all those people who supposedly flaunted their beauty, because Lily Allen has never tried to gain attention in that way whatsoever. Amongst all of this, as well as a few other little stories here and there, and many deactivated and reactivated social media accounts later, Lily went a bit quiet for a short period, and up until she decided to get involved in the migration crisis, that is. You'd think that a young woman like Lily would have simply left this avenue alone, especially after there were a supposed number of contradictions with what little political involvement she beset upon herself during the momentous reign of the god-awful Gordon Brown, and then went on to go and support this bloody wet sock. But no. Upon visiting the makeshift shithole in Calais, she was supposedly so disturbed and moved by the sights to be seen that ultimately she took it upon herself to apologize on behalf of the UK. Right. I could fill minute after minute going into a different direction altogether with this video if I decided just to talk about the Calais camp. So rather than drag on about how the poor economic migrants who just want to hop from one place to another regardless of what might come of their actions, it's bad enough that the camp itself was riddled with crime, constant fights breaking out between people from places such as Sudan and Afghanistan. There have been word of drugs being passed around recreationally, and also numerous attacks and items stolen from various reporters, as well as supposed indecent touching amongst female reporters. From some migrants, apparently, anyway. And no doubt you would have heard about the damage and hostility that is faced by the risk of travelling through the area, by many lorry drivers especially, be it their job. Lorries have been vandalised, drivers hurt in confrontations, drivers being fined or even sacked from their jobs due to migrants finding their way onto their means of transport. It's ridiculous. And of course there's all the poor little bearded children too. Funny, considering more than 2/3 of the refugees coming into the UK at the time were assessed by their age, and they were actually over 18 at the time. Anyway, I'm going off track. I'll make my opinions on further details of Calais clear another time, mark my words. So yes, little Lily may want to apologise for herself and Britain, but I can firmly say here and now that split-arse left-wing Lily doesn't owe anybody an apology on my behalf. And here's why. Despite having no right to speak for others, Lily is, as expected, a complete hypocrite. So, behind the tears and promises, such as Lily stating that she herself would take numerous migrants upon their arrival into Britain, in particular she made a point of saying that she would even take in the little sprog she spoke to in her interview at the camp. Oh, and for those of you who haven't seen the interview, the child I'm addressing seems to be the only child under 16 who doesn't have a beard. Obviously all the other children over there are neatly potted in horse shit at birth, because if you're supposedly 16 or under, and you look like this, then you're certainly well matured. But yes, upon the young lad's arrival into the UK, despite any early struggles he may or may have not had in entering the country, Lily didn't seem to jump at the chance of taking him in. God, I didn't expect that outcome, did you? Anyway, sarcasm aside, of course Lily wasn't going to take him in. But the rest of the country all knew that. Well, by the rest of the country, I mean all those of us who live in the real world, of course, not stuck-up celebrity types who just jump on the bandwagon of whatever is popular and expect further recognised fame from all the shit that comes dribbling out of their mouths. Whether it be an act of sympathy or publicity, most likely the latter, dear Lily did, it would seem, take in a number of tenants at her luxury London flat. Paying tenants, I might add, not exactly the Syrian refugees she promised to take in, but then again, who was she to know the difference, eh? Well, upon doing so, just prior to Christmas of last year, it would seem that Lily had a knock of reality hit her on the head, as there were problems arising with the tenants, in that she claimed they were refusing to leave. Yes, apparently they have claimed diplomatic immunity, and that there's nothing much she could do, because of course, be it in the past when you can afford a 4.2 million Cotswolds mansion, along with the flat in question being a luxury 1.5 million, well, apartment, I should say. Well, what can oneself do? I don't know. With that sort of money, Lily, why don't you go and buy yourself a small village or hamlet, kill the inhabitants with your singing, and then take your pick of a property? Because, believe it or not, she actually made comments, be it for laughs or not, about being homeless at Christmas. She actually thought that this could be a possibility. Well, being that she meant it, of course. And even if it was made in sarcasm, why not take a moment, dear Lily, seeing you're such a humanitarian, to consider the people of the world who literally do spend Christmas Day, as well as many other days and nights, living on the streets and sleeping rough. But despite all the drama, as always, things quietened down, and after some silence on both parts, the tenants decided to leave. Not only did they leave, but they did so claiming they weren't sure what the problem was, and that when the news hit them in regards to what Lily had said on Twitter, which she later swiftly deleted, by the way, they claimed to have been left shocked, saying that they didn't even know there was an issue between themselves and Lily. Well, whether this is true or not, who's to say, but if you ask me my view in a nutsack, I'm betting dear little Lily took in the tenants to ease off the pressure from the public in calling her a hypocrite. Later decided that she didn't like it and wanted her home back, basically got bored of the whole thing and made these ridiculous remarks. It seemed quite legitimate to me that these people who were living in her flat came across as being very private and quite upset and angry at the whole outcome. even going on to say that they were sorry to have had Lily as a landlord. So I suppose that tells us something, anyway. The whole thing on Lily Allen's part just seemed to be one big attention-seeking farce. But then again, this is what happens when you get people such as Lily Allen getting involved in matters such as these. It's not so much about the genuine problems at hand and how to resolve them, it becomes more about themselves and how everything can be a reflection onto them. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with having an opinion and acting on it, God knows. That's what I'm doing right now myself in speaking to you. But for Pete's sake, at least have some clue about what you're talking about and maybe have the right intentions. Personally, I did enjoy something Sarah Vine said about Lily in one particular article, and that was, and I quote, "I don't pretend to be a pop star, so why does Miss Allen pretend to be a journalist?" And like I said, it's easy to see why such people like Sarah Vine and many others have this to say, and that's because we are all getting a little bit tired and fed up of all the morons who can only see as far as their noses and live in their own little bubbles of bullshittery speaking for us. Those words apply to many, believe me, but keeping with speaking about the person at hand here, Lily, dear, stick to writing simple songs about your sex life and pretty shiny things, because everything you have to say about migrants, Grenfell Tower, Finsbury Park Mosque, etc., etc., nobody really cares. But seeing as you like to dish out advice on the many people of this country you seem to dislike, let me give some advice back to you. If you don't like it here, sell up, pack up, and go and live in a nice little hotspot somewhere, say, in the Middle East, and let's see how your presence is appreciated there. Well, now I've got that out of my system, another rant once again over. Oh, I do hate it when it comes to an end. So until next time, my dear ones, thanks for watching, thanks to those, of course, who subscribe, and as always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and of course a very good night to all.